Hello, friends, and welcome. My name's Popeye, and today we're playing some more Igarashi, but we're now on to Chapter 7, Minagoroshi, which is called the Massacre Arc. It more literally translates to Everyone is Killed. Um, I wonder how it's going to end. Um, Before we get into more about this game and what to expect, this game has some pretty mature themes. If any of the following trigger warnings are not for you, please by all means find some place that you'll feel more comfortable today. This game has themes of death, dismemberment, torture, blood, gore, child abuse, and there will be a lot of child abuse. Just warning, this one goes back to the theme around child abuse. There will be quite a bit covered there. Um, what else? Kidnapping, body horror, self harm, any of those things against a minor. Most of these people are between the ages of 11 and 15. So again, if any of those things are not for you, please find some place that is more comfortable for you this evening. If you missed any of what I said, please either ask me to repeat it or check down below in the description where I have a link where I have a list of a bunch of the trigger warnings, including all of those that are commonly in my streams. All right, so more about this game in general. So this is chapter 7. There's 8 core chapters. This is not the randomizer. I literally had the randomizer open just before this and had to close it because I expect it would use up a fair amount of my processing power. Yeah, we're at chapter 7 out of 8 for the core arcs. There's at least, I think, 14 to 16 other arcs that were made, which you can acquire. We've actually streamed one of them. Was it doing anything? No, it was actually paused. I had paused it just so that the in-game timer wouldn't run, because I wanted to have a better estimate of how long it actually takes me to complete one of the runs. I think it's the kind that still runs even if you alt-tab out, though. I was also just testing because I hadn't paused it before, and I wasn't sure if I paused it and came back. Sometimes things crash and whatnot. Yeah, the actual game was running. Yeah. Chapter 7 out of 8. We are now at what would be the second season of the anime. So, spoilers for the second season. This is the answered arc to Tatari Goroshi, which is chapter 3, which is also called the Curse Killing arc, which was the first time that we killed some uncles, and the first time we started calling this Uncle Hunter. So this is the answer arc to Uncle Hunter. This is Uncle Answers, and he will answer for his crimes. And then lastly, if you've been watching this series, we've kind of had six games plus the extra one up until this point that have basically gone and shown a bunch of different versions of the story in which different people go insane and kill and torture and whatnot each other. This game literally starts off as soon as we hit play and confirm, within probably the first 30 seconds, there will be huge spoilers. If you're still trying to formulate what you think is happening, or you don't want the spoilers to what's going on and you just kind of want to let it be the way it's been up until now, you should stop right now, because we're going to spoil all of that for you. So with that in mind, we're going to hop in. These last 2 chapters are significantly longer. So just to put it in perspective, the first 6 we did constitute just the first season of the anime, and then the last 2 chapters constitute the entire second season. So, to help put it in perspective, save points or juggle. I mean, knowing you, Samus, is you're going to save it for a juggle when the music is weird. Oh, Introducing channel points. Thanks, Twitch, for introducing channel points again. I was thinking of pulling Juggle Learn, or at least changing it, because so far no one's wanted to do it, unfortunately, or just not had the points for it. So maybe it's too expensive. And maybe having no one has the points, but if you save for it, first of all, Juggle Learn is 2 minutes, whereas regular Juggle is 1. So point for point, you get the same amount of juggling, first of all. But if you do Juggle Learn, you can get new juggles in the regular Juggle. Who doesn't want more juggles in their Juggle? And that's not true. Hero makes me scold. All right, so I think we've given enough time that if anyone doesn't want to see what's going to happen next, they have hopefully taken their leave. So we're going to start this up. This sounds like a meme. Want some juggle in your juggle? Am I prepared for a realization? Is the realization that you probably have already made this meme? All right, welcome to Minagoroshi, The Final Truth, the Massacre chapter. The story introduces the unit inside and out using all the actors. This is no longer a story, it's a public autopsy for all to join in. As they say, after loving someone, cut open their belly and eat their organs. It's a weird saying. I've never heard that saying. Same with stories. The difficulty is quite mild, well suited for those with pride. Your game library is quintupled. That's good news. All right, who's ready for creepy baby laugh? Because we're getting creepy baby laugh. I don't know why they put creepy baby laugh in. I don't know why. What are you doing? I don't see you playing by yourself that often. All you could do before was nod to my questions. Since when do you have your own will? I'm glad. I finally have a sister or brother, whichever you are. I used to be an existence of nothingness, just like you. One day, I began to have my own identity, my own thoughts, and eventually, my own body. So it's not a surprise to see you in possession of your own will. Welcome to this vast yet tiny world, my sister. You might be my brother, but let me call you my sister until I know for sure. This is an endless, eternal, and infinite world. But that doesn't mean it's boundlessly vast. I suppose you could describe it like a ring with a small diameter. While the ring is eternal, endlessly looping world, that doesn't mean it contains infinite space. Yes, in short, this world is eternally sealed. The future is supposed to be an infinite weave of countless choices. Yet for whatever reason, our world always ends in death. If I were to compare it to something, perhaps a maze of fate would be appropriate. Looping through the same moments forever steadily grows harder and more dejecting, eventually producing something like me. Then, as that draws further on, even one like you is born, and eventually this world may be filled with your sisters too. After that, we'll build a colony inside of it. Once we lose our interest in this maze, Rika Furude will disappear from this world. Looks like you still cling to this narrow world, Rika, though I lost interest long ago. Which is why I'm truly glad you were born for me to talk to. So what are you doing? Are you collecting fragments of memory? There's only 5 or 6 of them right now. Still must be fun for you, though. There used to be more fragments long ago. One by one, they disappeared into the darkness. Now, these are the only ones that remain clear. Oh, that's not how you're supposed to use it. See? Try and hold it up to the light. All of that is the life of Rika Furude and its end. That one is... Oh, I remember that one. That's the world where Keiichi was cursed. Those fragments are like books to me, so I titled that one the Onikakushi chapter. It's chapter 1. You remember what happened in that one? Good. That makes things easier. In Onikakushi, Keiichi Maibara was consumed by the darkness. He couldn't accept the kind words his friends offered him, and eventually beat them to death, not knowing of their kindness. We were all killed after that anyway. That had nothing to do with his story, though. That fragment is the Watanagashi chapter, chapter 2. Shion Sonozaki was cursed in that one. She killed many people out of revenge for her boyfriend's disappearance as he went missing in 1982. Rika worked so hard, but she was captured at the end and she was tortured to death. That was why she chose to commit suicide in the Miyakashi chapter, because things were going to turn out the same way. I think that's chapter 5. Let me pull up the list. So that's information we didn't have. Here's the list. Miyakashi, yeah, it was chapter 5. Which is the answer arc to Watanagashi. That fragment over there is the Minagoroshi chapter. It's chapter 3, which is the question arc to this answer arc. Sadako's uncle came back and locked her up inside her house. That was the worst world of all. There was nothing Rika was able to do in that world. Whenever Sadako's uncle comes back, Rika usually just gives up on that world. Fortunately, Sadako's uncle doesn't come back that frequently. That one is called Sumi Horoboshi chapter, which is the one we just finished last week, which is chapter 6. 6, yeah. Rika was there until just a moment ago. Rena Ryuga was possessed in that world. It's pretty exciting to see her take over the whole school. It surprised me to learn that Keiichi Maibara had a memory of the other worlds, just like we do. It was pretty amazing. Then again, most of us have some kind of memory like that. We all have an imaginary world within us. Some idea of what would have happened if you did things differently. It's like the strange feeling you get when you do something for the first time, but it feels like you've done it before. Everyone has a memory of an imaginary world in their mind. The memory is not always that clear. It's not surprising, really. You are special enough to see those fragments of memory. It's probably very difficult for you to understand how special you really are. You were born into a world where it's a natural thing for you to see these fragments. I was originally born in the normal world. I didn't know until recently that I could collect these fragments of memory. You grabbed those fragments just because you could. Hello, Avier, how's it going? I didn't know how to do that for a long time. I'm sorry. I'm sure you're not interested in hearing my story. Huh? What's wrong? What, are you curious about it? Oh. You're curious as to why so many different incidents occur in the same world? It's very interesting, isn't it? Why do you think that's the case? Let's think about it together. Thinking is the first step towards playing a game. The main character among Rika's group of friends is Keiichi Maibara. Onikakushi, who is possessed by suspicion, killed Rena Ryuga and Mion Sonozaki. If that was an inevitable event, he'd be killing them in every world. In other words, what Keiichi Maibara did in Onikakushi was not inevitable. Indeed. The only thing that's inevitable is Keiichi Maibara's role. Keiichi Maibara was someone with a naturally suspicious heart who would take the same actions in every world, but that didn't happen. It's true that Keiichi Maibara is both passionate and easily convinced of anything, but it's rare for him to exhibit the kind of rage that he did in Onikakushi. In other words, even though something might seem inevitable in one world, that may not be the case if compared to a different one. If something really is inevitable, It will happen for sure in every life. That's what true inevitability is like. It's very important that you know that. When you compare the different worlds, what's common among all of them is the truth. Understand? Like I said, what seems inevitable in one life could just be a random event in another. The club activities that Mion Sonozaki suggests are a good example. Mion Sonozaki had a strong inclination towards playing certain games. He would be playing them in every world. In reality, he participates in different activities in most of them. That means that the games they play in the club are randomly decided by Mion Sonozaki. We know that now because we've been through many different lives. Those who only live in one world can't see if an event in question is inevitable or random. Those who only live once can't predict what's going on in Mion Sonozaki's mind, but we can. Although the activities are random, Mion Sonozaki calls us together for the club meeting almost every day in every life. You can see that Mion Sonozaki holds a strong will towards having the club meeting. Mion Sonozaki always wants to play with the other club members, but she doesn't know what to play. See? We can read Mion Sonozaki's mind just by simply examining these fragments. With this alone, we can see part of who Mion Sonozaki really is. Let me talk a bit more about Keiichi Maibara. For those who only live once, the world of the Onikakushi chapter is nothing but a story where Keiichi suffers mysterious hallucinations and beat his friends to death. For them, there's nothing beyond that fact. We, however, can compare different fragments and find out something they could never see. As a result, we know that the murder of his friends was not inevitable. I told you that just earlier. In fact, there are about 5 or 6 pieces in front of you. He only kills his friends in one of them. That means we can roughly conclude that the possibility Keiichi Maibara triggers the tragedy is less than 20% and is almost a fluke. That means that amongst the countless worlds, Keiichi Maibara causing the tragedy is an unimportant factor. Now, can you find the common thread to be drawn from here? You found it already? No wonder you were born in this world. You're quick to learn the knack for playing with building blocks. I didn't figure that out for a while. I was born in the normal world, so I can only see things from a single world's perspective. I was too obsessed with the fact that Keiichi Maibara caused the tragedy, so I had trouble finding it. Right, that's exactly right. You see it? The Onikakushi, Watanagashi, Meikashi, and Sumihoroboshi chapters all have something in common. Someone in the group becomes violent because of dark and paranoid thoughts. In each world, either Keiichi Maibara, Shion Sonozaki, or Rena Ryugu become violent as their delusions grew stronger. Keiichi Maibara, Shion Sonozaki, and Rena Ryugu are my close friends, but they were all born and raised differently. The only common factor is they all live in Hinamizawa. I said it not too long ago, though. When we peer through these fragments of multiple worlds, constant phenomena become our facts, and the chance phenomena hold little meaning. In other words, the unrelated individual culprits are not all that important. Go further, the violence of their crimes also bears no meaning. Keiichi Maibara beat his friends to death, Shion Sonozaki killed the central people of the 3 families, Rena Ryugu took over the school. They were all different. There's nothing in common there. In fact, the very, very important truth is that while the culprit and crimes are decided at random, their process of growing paranoid until they resort to violence is always constant. The suspect changes every time, but the process does not. After comparing the different worlds, this is the truth I found. This is the one truth that is common to all the worlds of Hinamizawa. The rule is that a random person becomes violent. Under the influence of paranoid thoughts, this is Rule X. Keiichi Maibara, Shion Sonozaki, and Rena Ryugu. These with no particular connection have the potential to succumb to the rule with random probability. I don't know what the probability is that those pieces will be ensnared by that rule. Perhaps there's some rule to that too. Is it because these 3 are all close in age? Or is it because they all live in Hinamizawa? Well, we're not detectives or police officers. This is not something that a small girl like us, Rika Furude, can easily figure out. At least, now we know that there's a mysterious rule in the world of Hinamizawa. People who only live in one world have no way of knowing that. I'm proud of myself for figuring that out. As for you, it's not particularly surprising, though. Huh? What did you say? That's right. If something is common among the worlds, it means it's fated to happen. Some events quickly come to mind, don't they? Right, Jiro Tomitake and Mio Takano are always killed in those worlds. On top of that, they're murdered in exactly the same way in every world. In other words, unlike a previous rule with its variability, their murders are thoroughly planned out by someone with a strong will. That does not fit with the mysterious vague Rule X that leads a random individual to violence. After all, they are always murdered, regardless of who falls to Rule X. Therefore, there's another rule to these worlds. A rule that says Jiro Tomitake and Mio Takano will get killed on the night of Watanagashi. Let's call it Rule Y. Don't you see how funny this is? Jiro Tomitake and Mio Takano are killed in every world, right? Every time, the character gets cursed always thinks that their deaths have something to do with the danger that's awaiting them. This is weird. Yeah, it's an interesting bit. It's supposed to be the thinking of what's taken place, I guess, like fed to you. Which is why I said if you wanted to think about it, you should. Your opportunity has already passed. The fact that someone turns violent, Rule X, and Jiro Tomitake and Mio Takano's deaths, Rule Y, are supposed to be two independent rules, but they all tend to link them together. Of course, no one could say that's how they become ensnared in the spell of paranoia, leading them to violence to begin with. Hero. Prime subs are not weekly. Also, I have to scold you for gifting me a sub in Zero's channel just because I got the hat. It's not how hats work. Probably true. But do you think, in their paranoia, that they notice someone is trying to lead them to link those rules together? Yes, whoever the piece leading them is, they are the one making the stage called Hinamizawa very complicated. A reverse scold? Okay, I can do a reverse scold. So here's a reverse scold on Samus's. You should have noticed at least two suspicious people. Know who I'm talking about? That's right. I'm referring to Crowdo Oishi and Mio Takano. You compare our previous fragments, the role of the piece known as Crowdo Oishi becomes clear. He's a detective who's retiring this year, and he's in a hurry to solve the mystery of the series of deaths in Hinamizawa. After he retires, he'll have to move away from the village. That's why he's desperate to solve this case before he has to leave Hinamizawa. Why is he obsessed with the serial murders in Hinamizawa? That's right, because of the first murder involving the manager of the construction site. The victim was Oishi's close friend. You'll see that if you look at the Himatsubushi chapter. Which chapter is that? That's chapter 4, the one where they go into the past. The past one with the kidnapping. Oishi was there when the dam conflict was at its peak. He saw how the Sonozaki family took control of the Onikafuchi Guardians. He believed that the Sonozaki family was pulling the strings behind the whole incident. That's why I always suspected that the Sonozaki family was behind the series of mysterious deaths, regardless of the evidence or lack thereof. His personal biased belief, combined with his credibility as a police detective, affected the pitiable victims of persecution complexes in each world. As a result, the pitiful victims of Rule X come to accept the Sonozaki families, the identity of the unknown force their paranoia seeks. Can you hire me to dog sit Oreo while you're at work? I feel like it would be very hard for you to get Oreo from, California to Canada on the other side of the country. Samus's is slightly easier. You don't have to cross an international border, I guess. Shion Sonozaki's case was the most conspicuous one in that matter. Oh yes, if this piece Oishi didn't intervene, perhaps the victims of Rule X wouldn't have resorted to such violence. Do you offer remote work? Yeah, Samus's will look at a camera of your dog and let you know if the dog needs anything. So the role his piece plays is to indirectly cause the tragedy. Hurt herself isn't good, and I mean, eating your socks is one, not good for your socks, but also can be very unhealthy for dogs. Because Oreo's not a big dog, right? There was a client I was working for, and they had I think it was a British bulldog named Rhino, and he once ate like a ball of socks or a pair of socks, and it got stuck in his intestine. They had to like cut him open to get the socks out. Medium-sized still could be an issue. I don't know who named him this, but Oishi or someone's servant is the perfect nickname for Oishi. 49 pounds before breakfast? Okay, it's a fairly large dog. I mean, I'm pretty biased because our dog, who's not here this weekend, is, what is he at? Like 140 pounds or something? At least your cat is not suspicious because it's not weirdly snuggly. The other suspicious person is Mio Takano. One would assume the only role of her piece is to amuse herself with the research into Onikafuchi's dreadful history and to take pleasure in scaring others with those tales. However, just like Oishi, she also gives them the idea that the Sonozaki family is behind all the mysterious incidents that happen in the village. Samus is wearing a trench coat? It's pretty suspicious. Constant pets? Samus's can build a robot hand that just like does this. She interfered the most with Ren and Ryugu. Mio Takano, Ren and Ryugu was the perfect prey, grasping at straws to try and identify the force she suspected. Ironically, however, Mio Takano always ends up getting killed at the end. If she had survived and seen Rena take over the school, she would have laughed long and loud. Now, have you realized that these two pieces and the roles they fulfill have their own role too? They talk about the Sonozaki family, and the listeners always believe them. This is Rule Z, and what a humorous rule it is. You should already have an answer to this mystery in your fragments on hand. The fact is that the Sonozaki family always acts as if they are responsible no matter if they are or not. They always pretended to be the villains in order to make sure that the people continue to fear them. As a result, the villagers have believed that the Sonozaki family has been pulling the strings ever since the dam conflict ended. Proud Oishi and Mio Takano were simply fooled by that rule. Actually, the whole village is fooled by it. Still, the more I think about it, the stranger the series of mysterious deaths in Hinamizawa seems to me. Do you know why? Nearly all of the fragments of memory we have here are from 1983, so I have no idea about the incidents from 1980 to 1982. But it's likely that interpreting these murders as serial is simply a result of falling victim to Rule Z, leaving that the Sonozaki family is pulling the strings behind everything. In short, they may be trying to conflate those multiple crimes, each happened for different reasons, into one big case. Not cuckold people. Also, one sec. Come on, computer, you can do this. There we go. I'm sure someone... Why is that being quoted? Because you said you can't cook old people. Not you can't cook for old people, just that you can't cook old people. Which makes it sound like to me you can cook younger people. I have no way of discerning the truth from the fragments here. Still, perhaps something lies in one of them. Each case was supposed to have been solved individually, after all. I don't know if the theory is sound or irrational, but it might surprisingly be an element we can't ignore. That reminds me, Mion said something intriguing in the Miyakashi chapter. That curse system she came up with. You remember that? Her theory was that the villagers believe they are allowed to kill an enemy of the village on the night of the Watanagashi in the name of Oyashiro-sama's curse. That the foundation of murder is allowed on that night alone is the true identity of the curse. Since most of the fragments here are from 1983, there's nothing to back the validity of Shion's theory. There's still interesting things about it. We didn't say you could cook them well. In other words, her theory is that the suspect is not the one who's committing the crime, it's the environment that's causing the murder. People in a single world tend to analyze a criminal's life to determine the process that led them to a crime, but her idea is different. The real crime is committed not by the criminals, but by the environment. In other words, it may only be happenstance that robber A committed the crime, and the environment of poverty may have created robber B instead, or perhaps even robber C. And may not even be a criminal. Person A may not even be a criminal in another world. Therefore, the real criminal is not A, but the environment that creates A, B, or C. And well, while people in a single world may be able to reach such an idea, the widespread desire to blame commonly causes A to be lynched by society, while the environment that gave rise to A goes ignored. Did I confuse you? I'm sorry. Perhaps that example is actually harder to understand for you. It's easy for me to see it like that because I'm from the normal world. At cooking for old people. Let me make it simple for you. The culprit behind the tragedy in many worlds isn't individuals like Keiichi Maebara or Shion Sonozaki, but the environment. So Rule X is the true culprit at fault. You're earning good marks if you can grasp that, even if we don't know the identity of Rule X. You can grasp the 3 rules governing the stage of Hinamizawa, rules X, Y, and Z. Then you're earning very good marks. As long as you understand those rules, even if this is your first experienced world, you should easily find the truth without distraction. See? Isn't it fun? I think it's just the thing where in math, like a lot of times you just have X, Y, Z as your coordinates, so a lot of times they're just used as variables. I don't think there's any particular reason for it. And then later they did go to ABC as like criminal A, criminal B, criminal C. So maybe they just wanted to be as far removed from that as possible. Nearly 3 simple rules are interacting on the stage, creating a kaleidoscope of different worlds. I use IJK for loop counters. Those are my loop counters, IJK. If you go deeper than K, your loop's too big. Even going to K is usually pretty bad. This is probably a very unusual case. In other locations, you shouldn't be able to see such extreme variation even after looping through several worlds. If you use recursion. It just keeps me entertained, just staying here and watching these worlds revolve. Anyway, there's one more fact that we can understand from these fragments of worlds. This is the biggest problem we Rika Furudes are facing. The fact that Rika Furude always dies each time. It's as if June 1983 is a dead end for her. Worse, there's no randomness to it, it's guaranteed to happen. In other words, it's the same pattern as the deaths of Jiro Tomitake and Mio Takano. following the exact same rules as Rule Y. Tomitaki, Jiro, and Takano Mio are always murdered on the night of Watanagashi. Furude Rika's date of death is not always the same, but she's always dead by the middle of June. You just have to do while true, do. Jiro Tomitake and Mio Takano are probably attacked on their way home, so that's why it always happens on the same night. But for Rika Furude, it's different. She takes different actions in every world, and her lifestyle is very unpredictable. For that reason, the day of her death is not always the same. However, she always dies in June, because a similar, powerful conviction vows to kill her too. Your cat is attacking her tail? She just heard about recursions trying to grab from the tail of the call stack. So can we assume that the same Rule Y killing them is also the rule behind her death? It's the same person killing all three of them? I don't know if it's the same person, but it's highly likely the same rule is at work. Is it the same person or the same organization? Is it the same views, the same goals? Rika's most important goal is to escape her deadly fate. It doesn't mean that she just wants to leave the village and survive. She wants to live happily in the village. All her friends must also be happy too. That's Rika's happy future. The ideal future she hopes for. It's tragic that we can't realize just simple desire no matter how many times we repeat this. Though it's a tragedy, we're only able to proceed because we're beings capable of comparing the fragments from different worlds. By the way, I have some interesting information. Ulrika is almost always killed by Rule Y. You notice that she's killed by Rule X in some worlds? Right, it happened in Watanagashi and the Miyakashi chapters. Rika Furude committed suicide, but can you say she was more or less killed by Rule X by Shion Sonozaki in those worlds? In other words, this is a blunder for Rule Y. Rule Y is trying to kill Rika with a strong desire to achieve some aim, but she was killed before that as a result of unrelated Rule X. That might have caused them to show some disturbance. If Rule Y's objective is simply to bury Rika, then it's not a problem. If they have some objective beyond that, then that might show up as some other phenomenon. Perhaps the Watanagashi and Miyakashi chapters have something in common, something that doesn't happen in the other worlds. Unfortunately, we're Rika Furude, so we don't know what happens after Rika is dead. Or, by any chance, do you know what happened? Since I'm Rika Furude, I only know of events during Rika's life. You, on the other hand, are a special existence who was born in a superior world. Is there anything that didn't happen in the Watanagashi and Miyakashi chapters, that happened in all the other worlds after Rika's death? If you know anything, then that must be another truth behind Rule Y. I want to go back and read that again, because this is a bit confusing. Anything that didn't happen in those worlds. Memories I have here are all mainly about the chaos brought about by Rika's friends, that is, Rule X. But its foundation, Rule Z, and the obvious hostility common among all worlds, Rule Y, are what I believe to be the true rules governing this stage. If so, then Rika's path is a thorny one. She needs to fight Rule Y in order to survive. Unless she defeats it, she has no future past June 1983. And to win her own happiness, she must also beat Rule X to win her friend's safety. As long as that's undefeated, one of Rika's precious friends may be led to tragedy. If that happens, then even should Rika survive, she wouldn't have the happy future she hopes for. She may also have to defeat Rule Z, just as Sonozaki Shion faced in Miyakashi. So long as Rule Z remains, even if she escapes 1983, it's possible another tragedy may lay in waiting in 1984. It's extremely likely that Rule Z is the breeding ground for Rule X. Hinamizawa's fundamental belief that the Sonozaki family is behind everything and a custom that anything can be misconstrued as the curse may indirectly be the root of all evil here. People are not surprised to see somebody die on the night of Watanagashi. That type of thinking is keeping the curse alive in Hinamizawa, where it causes even more tragedy, Rule Z reinforcing itself. Rules X, Y, and Z. There are 3 rules that hunt Rika down in the eternal June of 1983. They are tough obstacles. We didn't even figure out these 3 common rules until recently. Were you aware of them? If you were, I'll give you straight A's. I've tried so hard in the past to break these rules, but I was never successful. However, a miracle happened in the Sumi Horoboshi chapter, the last one. Keiichi was able to recognize a small fragment from another world by chance, and he beat Rule X. In the end, Rika was still killed that night by Rule Y, though. But still, 1 rule was defeated. That was a huge leap forward. Rika knew there were 3 common rules among the worlds, but she could never break any of them. Eventually she gave up and lost interest in the worlds. That's how I was born. However, she's different now. She learned something valuable from Keiichi Maibara, that the rules can be broken with a strong enough will to fight. If she can break all 3 rules, Rika Furude will be freed from her eternal prison. She doesn't have much time left, though. Rika has traveled through many worlds. Her physical lifespan is not a problem, but her mental lifespan is getting shorter. Mentally, she's extremely old, and her soul is starting to turn into something different. In the end, she'll probably lose the ability to experience singular worlds. She's already showing those signs, and eventually her memories from the parallel worlds will mix together, ultimately causing her derangement and the loss of Rika Furude's soul. Yes, this is still Uncle Killer, and in fact, this is going to be dealing a lot around the uncle from Uncle Killer. Then she will disappear. That means you and I are going to be left in this dark world. Fragments of our memories will gradually disappear. We'll be left alone in the eternal darkness. Eventually, we will die. Rika Furude is aware of that. She knows that our mental lifespan is getting shorter and shorter. Hanyu is also losing her powers. She can't rewind through years of time like she used to. Her powers decrease so much that she can barely rewind 1 month of time. Actually, she can only rewind a few weeks. In the next world, she should only have about 2 weeks of time. Rika Furude is going to try and break all 3 rules in just those 2 weeks. Okay, we have a poem. I want to know what's outside the well, so I tried to claw my way up from there. I want to know what's outside the well, so I continued to climb even when I fell and injured myself. I finally realized the higher I climb, the more pain I feel when I fall. Oh. And of course it ends. Let me pull up the rest of the poem. I wanted to know... Oh, well, let's watch this and get DMCA'd. So the implication from that, there's several major implications. Actually, I'll save this until after this in case people want to watch this and pay attention to it. I think that was actually the same intro as the last game. I think the last 3 games are all the same one, because I think they all got ported the same way. This is from, I think, the Switch release. So 2 things we have to do. So first I will finish the poem, then I will answer Samus's question. I'm just going to read the whole poem again, because I don't know about you, I forgot it. I wanted to know the world that was outside the well, so I tried hard to get out from the bottom of the well. I wanted to know the world that was outside of the well, so I climbed up numerous times, despite falling down over and over again. Then I realized it. The higher and higher I climb, the pain increases when I fall down again. When my interest in the world outside of the well began to equal the amount of pain, that was when I finally realized the meaning of the story to... Why do you have to put German into this? I apologize if I butcher this German. Der Froschkönig, which is the story of the Princess and the Frog. Thanks, game, for making me speak German. Well, attempting to, at least. Okay, so that was the poem. Take of that what you will. Samus's question. The implication of this, we have several things that have just been revealed in the past 40 minutes. One, if you looked at those past six, as a person who knows 0 German, 10 out of 10. If you look at those past 6 games, one, they weren't separate. They weren't individual. It wasn't like they were different experiences of the same events. And we saw from Keiichi that he remembered what he did in a previous life. And from what we just read there, Rika has this collective consciousness of all these world lines. And they don't explicitly say it here, but the canon is that at this point she's mentally about 200 years old. So she's lived through these events, sometimes longer, sometimes years back, sometimes shorter, for 200 years, and she remembers all of it. And she's getting to the point where her spirit just can't hold out anymore. It's been around for 200 years. It just can't hold out anymore. And she's starting to lose the ability to see what's happened in the past, which are these different memory fragments, and they only had the 6, which are the 6 previous games. And there's a being that was introduced called Hanyu, which we don't know a whole lot about at this point, but was said that it could turn back time. So Rika and Hanyu are working together to turn back time to try and avoid the tragedy. So apparently I love games with time travel because we're back at time travel. But instead of branching world lines that could happen in parallel, this has been one world line, my arm's the world line, where something's bad happened, they go back, and then through randomness, something in this changes. So it's not like in Steins Gate where you have a specific decision that changes what you did, and now you have this other branching world line here. It's randomness, so it's something beyond the control of our characters, and quite possibly just beyond the control of anyone in general. And they talk about that in who goes crazy, who dies, like all of this stuff. Yeah, we have some RNG, which is basically, I guess it's kind of like the Steins Gate theory that everything converges at the end. At the end, everyone, someone goes crazy, some people get killed, someone believes that the Sonozaki family is behind it, and people die. So that's the convergence at the end. And then partway through, there's a couple pieces that are consistent. And we have Takano and Jiro-san always die the night of the Watanagashi. That's consistent. The way they die, the location they die, the manner in which they die, all of that has stayed the same throughout all 6 chapters. Then you have Oishi, the police officer, always works with the person who will end up being deranged. And the theory that they present here is he's helping them direct their emotion, their craziness at the Sonozaki family, because he believes that they're the problem. And then Takano is always talking with also with the person who goes crazy before she dies. Most visible in the last one where she gives the scrapbooks to Rena. Less so in the ones where she talks with Keiichi. So we have this information, and we've been going back in world lines for hundreds of years to try and break out of this to a point where, one, Rika doesn't die, because she always dies. Usually she's killed. We see in chapter 3 that she's, at least in that one, she's ritualistically disemboweled. There's one where she commits suicide by, and this is actually probably one of the most memorable and graphic scenes. She takes a knife, puts it against the wall, and smashes her head into it repeatedly to commit suicide. That's chapter 4. Yeah, that's chapter 4. And in chapter 2, she is tortured and killed by Shion. So that's the method in which that happens is different. She always dies in some regard. So that's what we know. We're at the point where Hanyu's power is waning. We can only go back in time like 3-4 weeks, and next time it'll only be like 2 weeks. And at a certain point in time, you just can't go back far enough to make a difference. And at that point, it would be game over. So that's the implications, that we only have a few worlds left, and this is one of them. I felt no gravity in the darkness, and lost all my senses as a result. I banged my head on the floor with a dull thud. Seeing stars behind my eyelids, I curled into a ball while holding my head in pain. The one thing I think that gets a lot of people, besides the the blood and gore and the all of that kind of stuff, that's obviously not for everyone, is it can be a bit repetitive, especially at the very start of these games. The first 2 to 3 chapters can be a bit slow going, and it can be pretty convoluted. Once we get to this point, it can be pretty convoluted. Before I started the journey of streaming all of these, I had to go back and look at how did this work again? Like how did this piece link up? And I was like, oh, Also, it appears like we are Rika in this game again. I had no idea why I was in this situation, but as soon as I heard their voices from the top of the cliff, I realized that I must have fallen. I remember. I was playing behind the shrine with the rest of the club members. I got too excited and started doing something very dangerous. The tree branch broke. That's how I fell off the cliff. My body started to ache all over. I remembered how I fell, but I still felt strange for some reason. I couldn't remember what I was doing. No, it was more than that. I couldn't remember who Rika Frude was before I fell off the cliff. I heard Hanyu's panicked voice. Introducing a new character after 6 games. I looked behind me and saw Hanyu standing there with a scared look on her face.
Hanyu, そんなことはどうでもいいわ。今日はいつ？昭和何年の何月何日？
I always ask this question first when something like this happens. She finally realized I was asking the same old question.
昭和58年6月なのです。綿流しのお祭りが来週なのですから、なんてこと。それしか猶予がないってわけ。僕たちの力も、これが精一杯なのです。
And you muttered regretfully. It was the middle of June, 1983. This really was the best she could do. I had no choice. I couldn't complain. I gradually started to remember more
私がまた
things.
昭和58年の6月にいるということは、また私は殺されたのか。
After Rena surrendered to the police, all of the classmates were given checkups at the clinic. So this is the end of chapter 6. This is what happens to Rena after Keiichi, or not to Rena, to Rika after Keiichi and Rena finish their battle on top of the schoolhouse. I didn't get hurt, so I was sent back home after they determined that I had no injuries. My memory started getting vague from that point on, common characteristic of my violent deaths. When my life is taken away violently, the memory before death becomes vague with static, like a violently ripped roll of toilet paper. That example should make it easy to understand, even if it's uncouth. That's why I have no clear memory of what happened and how I died that night. I only have vague memories. I think someone covered my mouth with a handkerchief or something and I passed out. It's about the only thing that I remember, and only vaguely. I'm not even sure if it really happened. The only thing I know for sure is that I was attacked on my way home, or possibly after I got there, and that I was murdered suddenly. I don't know who killed me or how I was killed. I'm glad that at least I don't remember the horrific ending to my life every time it happens. Because of my experiences, I think I understand why ghosts wander around this world, not knowing why they died so suddenly. To death from a long-lasting illness, people tend to remember that they were sick. They can kind of assume that they died after being sick for a long time. When your memory is violently disrupted like mine, it can get quite confusing. When I first experienced this, I wasn't sure if I was dreaming or not. I even thought that I hit my head hard and lost my memory. I needed to organize things before I got too confused. My name is Rika Furude. People look at me in a special way, but that's not a big deal for me. All I want is a happy life where I can play around with my best friends. I can't remember how long I've been living just for the sake of obtaining that simple happiness. The panicked girl here is named Hanyu, and we have a new character for once, so let's take a look at... There's the original artwork. There's the, was that the PlayStation version, and the one we're going with. I'm the only one who can see her. Perhaps she only exists inside of my head? At any rate, Hanyu's invisible, and can generally only interact with me. It'll be a long story if I try to explain Hanyu's existence, so I won't be doing that right now. Besides, I don't even know how I should talk about her. She's been there since I was born, and her existence is a natural thing for me. I saw everyone running up the gravel road toward me. They're my important and lovable best friends. Our group's active, boisterous, and we get serious about doing stupid things. I'm never bored with them around, and I love them very much.
リカちゃん大丈夫？捻挫とかしてない？どこ打ったの？おじさんに見せてみて。ありがとうなのです。頭にタンコブができただけなのですよ。
I think all I got was a bump at least. My injury wasn't as serious as everyone thought.
頭を打った時はその場では大丈夫でも油断がなりませんでしたよ。
それもそうだな。念には念で監督に診察してもらった方がいいかもしれないな。
レナもそれがいいと思うな。どうしよう、監督を呼んでくる？そうだね。近くの家で電話を借りて監督を呼んでみるよ。そこまでしなくても大丈夫なのですよ。この通りピンピンしてますのです。リパー。ダメですわよリカ。万が一ということがありましたよ。
Sadako warned me with a stern voice. It really wasn't a big deal, but I decided to nod since Sadako was trying to be generous. She wasn't trying to boss me around or anything. She was only saying that because of how much she cares. I've seen it before in the many different lives that I've been through. I've no doubt that she's really concerned about me. It's not just Sadako. Mion, Rena, and Keiichi are the same. They're also nice to me, and they truly do care. Mion left to look for a phone. Rena also left with a towel, looking for the water tap. Sadako remained nearby, taking care of me with a worried face. And Hanyu was just standing there, still wearing a panicked look. Keiichi seemed to be panicked too, but he was trying not to show it. He was standing by me, wearing a calm expression.
大丈夫か？
大丈夫なのですよ。もう全然痛くないのです。
なら不幸中の幸いだったよな。よかったよかった。
I wouldn't feel anything special about his words if this was a while ago. But that moment when Rena took over the classroom, when she hurt Mion, Keiichi tried his best to save Rena, even so. He was more reliable than I ever had imagined from his normal behavior. He's usually an insensitive guy who hurts other people's feelings without noticing, but that's not his true self. He has a secret side. He's willing to sacrifice himself for other people. I was just observing that not too long ago, so I can honestly feel his generosity now. Now that I think about it, Keiichi regained a memory from another world the previous time around. Is it possible that he carries that memory in this world too? If that's the case, I have some hope. Hanyu and I are totally powerless. Hanyu is only like heir to everyone but me, and I'm just a little girl. There's only so much that we can do ourselves. Keiichi is different. He changed the fate that I'd once resigned myself to. He's somebody who may have the power to take me to my unseen future. If I can get Keiichi to understand me, he could be my hero. Perhaps I'm actually not expecting that much out of him. I just want someone to understand my struggle of being stuck in this maze.
Keiichi?
I spoke to him slowly. It had been a while since I felt so nervous. I hadn't felt this way since I started my endless life in 1983. As a witch, I normally would know what his response would be before even talking to him. I often remain silent because I already know how pitiful the reply would be. But in that case, why was I so nervous now?
呼んだか、リカちゃん。
Hanyu gave me a disappointed look before I responded to Keiichi.
Rika.
I could tell what Hanyu was thinking too. A miracle wasn't going to happen. Miracles do happen. One could have happened many times in my other lives. I've only seen one miracle before. The miracle that Keiichi gave me was a once-in-a-lifetime kind of miracle. Only if it happened again would it be a true miracle. I won't get out of this world just because I rolled 6 on the die once. I can't get out unless I get a miracle that's equivalent to getting 6 on the die 10 times in a row. And so I rolled 10 dice, wishing that they'd all turn out to be 6.
ケイチ。
どうしたんだよ。どこか痛むのか？
He looked at me worriedly after I called his name twice.
覚えていますですか？
I knew how sudden my question was. As I thought he would, he looked at me with a confused face.
え？覚えてるって何の話だよ。
I looked inside his eyes to see his true feelings. He should remember, he should know. Even though he doesn't have the memory, Keiichi experienced it.
なんですのケイチさん。何かリカに悪いことでもしたんじゃありませんの？自分の胸によく聞いてごらんなさいですわよ。ケイチ、学校の屋根の上に登ったことを覚えていますですか？学校の屋根？ケイチさん、そんなとこに登ったんですの？サトコは黙っててなのです。ケイチ、覚えていませんですか？
俺が屋根の上にいつ？いや、リカちゃん、それは多分他の誰かの勘違いだろ。俺屋根なんか登ったことないし、登り方だって知らないよ。
Of course, you haven't experienced it in this world yet. Please tell me that you remember. I know you've never been up on the roof, but you should still remember doing it. You Shouldn't be able to remember it, true, but you actually did it once. You should be able to remember it once again.
屋根の上にボールでも取りに行ったんじゃありませんの？
いや、そんな経験一度もねえよ。さとこは経験あるか？
まさか屋根の上なんて上がったら先生に怒られましたよ。
でもさ、屋根の上で昼寝とかしたら気分が良さそうだよな。
覚えてるわけないのですよ。
Good.
そんな簡単に奇跡が起こるなら僕もリカもこんな苦労はしないのですよ。
Shut up. I knew that. I knew that he wouldn't
どうせまた
remember.
僕たちはお祭りの終わりとともに消えてゆく夏のセミの運命なのです。うるさいな。
As I stared at her fiercely, Hanya realized that she'd crossed a line. This might be a waste of time. The maze we're in might not have an exit. It might be an endless loop without a goal in place. We are trapped in this fate. I thought that Keiichi might be able to get me out of here. That Keiichi I saw was truly a miracle, a momentary glimmer. Keiichi of this world doesn't bear that same miracle. All the same, I'm not going to give up. Last time too, I gave up on fighting destiny. I realized Rena was beyond salvation, so I bid her farewell, forsook that world. Keiichi fought and broke the cycle of fate. I should have worked harder with that Keiichi in that world. Could have broken this endless cycle together with him. Am I going to repeat this life waiting for that miracle to happen again? I can't do that. I don't want to repeat the same life anymore. I'm tired of it. I'm tired of this world, my fate, and everything. I'm tired of getting murdered by destiny. Keiichi showed me a miracle. I should be able to do the same too. I must fight. I must fight with all my remaining power. I was always fighting. I was fighting when I had more power, but I never made it. How can I expect to win this time? Still, I must fight. Keiichi taught me that fate can be shattered. So I'm gonna fight one more time. Okay, and we finished the first chapter. So we'll view the one tip we got. To my granddaughter. I'm sorry for leaving you like this. I just need you to understand I'd rather take my own life than be fearful of how many days I have left to live. That's why I'm writing this letter to you. I can't stand the fear of being unable to leave behind a will while my life is prolonged, even as I lose my consciousness. In the end, there's nothing I can leave behind for you. I was unable to leave any of my achievements to this world. I was forgotten before I was dead. I leave this world a humiliated man, knowing that I had no appreciation from anyone. You must do better than me. You must achieve something that your grandfather was never able to achieve. I don't mind what field you choose. You must leave your mark on this world. You must leave behind your achievements. You will eventually die someday. You'll eventually turn to ashes. As a human being, that's your inevitable fate. But if you achieve a great success, you will live forever even after you depart. Those who live beyond their deaths are called gods. I wish to become one, but I was unable to do so. So in my place, he must become a god someday. Alright, so we'll save and start chapter 2. We're at the clinic, it looks like. Yeah.
はい。もう結構ですよ。
Irie withdrew the needle from Sadako's arm. It must not have hurt much for the needle to be pulled out. Sadako kept her eyes closed in fear, thinking that the needle was still inside her arm.
お注射はもう終わったのですよ。え？あら、もう終わってたんですの。
Sadako opened her eyes. She found that Irie was no longer sitting in front of her. Takano was wiping her arm with rubbing alcohol
そうよ
instead.
もう終わってたのよ。 入江先生は私よりお注射が上手だから。終わったことにも気づかなかったでしょ。傷口を揉んじゃダメよ。できれば重いものも持たないこと。
分かっていましたよ。さとこは偉いのですよ。なでなでしてあげますのです。注射くらいもう全然平気ですのよ。理科に撫でられるような覚えはございませんですわ。
I love the knot of cables on the machine behind them and the fact that it's not plugged in. Not long ago, she would go into a panic when it was time for her to get her shot. The way she behaved today, it in itself is worthy of praise. Everyone in the room smiled, aware of that growth.
じゃあ、さとこちゃんはいつもの検査を受けてください。高野さん、お願いします。
ええ。さあ、さとこちゃん、いつものクイズをしましょうね。
高野さんのクイズは答えにくい問題が多くて私苦手ですわね。
いつもと同じよ。答えづらい問題はわからないと言ってくれればいいわ。変に考え込まず、自然に思いついた答えを口にしてくれればいいのよ。
Kano smiled at Sadako to ease her tension. Then she led Sadako to a desk at the back of the examination room.
さとこの具合、良いといいのです。
I don't know if it's because of the heat, but Sadako has been showing negative symptoms since last month. The change of the seasons can affect her physically and emotionally. It's not a surprise that this has happened to
私は
her.
入江たちのところへでも行って、さとこの容体を聞いてみるわ。羽生はどうする？僕はさとこのそばにいてあげますのです。ありがとう。そうしてあげて。
Hanyu went over to where Sadako was. Fortunately, I'm the only one who can see Hanyu. She won't be a distraction if she goes and observes Sadako's test. I, of course, would be a distraction like that. This is supposed to be a routine exam, but it seems like Takano is teasing her by giving her difficult questions. It would be pretty funny to observe how Sadako reacts to them. I'm a little jealous that Hanyu gets to watch everything without being a bother to Sadako. Urie was talking with two other staff members about Sadako's exam results. I walked up and joined them.
よかった。では、解放に向かっていますか。
From what Urie was saying, her results must have turned out well.
どうなのですか？
安心してください。いい結果が出ました。では、あとよろしくお願いします。
After ordering his staff to continue their work, Urie showed me some difficult paperwork and started explaining it to me.
先週の検査結果に少々焦りすぎたようです。急に気候が変わったので、交感神経が過敏に反応したのでしょう。風邪をひきかけたりということはありませんでしたか？
There was one night recently that was fairly hot. Sadako was sleeping without her blanket and her stomach was exposed. She might have caught a cold
お
that night.
腹を出して寝てたことがありましたです。おへそをつっついたけど起きなかったのです。
それは羨ましい。ぜひ今度そういうことがあったら呼んでください。私もさとこちゃんのおへそをプニプニしてみたいものです。
プニプニなのですよ。お腹もぽよぽよなのです。可愛いからお布団をかけるのがもったいないのですよ。
それがネビエの真相ですか。
いいか聞こえていましたよ。そういう時はこっそりお布団をかけてくださいませ。
ダメよ、さとこちゃん。時間も計ってるんだから、こっちに集中して。
Urie, Hanyu, and I all laughed. Sadako went back to her test with a bitter look on her face. Urie began speaking to me in a softer voice.
ただ、小康状態には戻りましたが、レベルはレベル3マイナス。昨日も今日も明日も、危険な状態を脱していないことに変わりはありません。
レベル3は永遠に治らないのですか？
アナフェラキシーショックと同じで、仮に異物が完全に取り除かれても、人体側に過剰な反応を示す体質が作られてしまいます。つまり、
さとこは完治しても一生 レベル3から治らない。
そういうことになります。ですが、悲観することはありません。規則正しい生活習慣とセルフコントロール、そしてある種の投薬を続けることによって、
一生治らない。
I looked at Sadako as she enjoyed taking her test. She seemed to be having fun, even while being teased by Takano. I can't believe that she's suffering from an incurable disease.
言葉を悪く言えばそうなります。ですが、世の中には難病ではあってもうまく病気と付き合っていけるケースも少なくありません。例えば糖尿病がそうでしょう。病気そのものは生涯治りませんが、その発症は抑えることができます。
I know that very well. There are many worse diseases in the world. Sadako might be in a relatively good situation compared to many other sick people.
もちろん、これで妥協するつもりはありません。さとこちゃんはきっと完治させます。絶対にです。
信じてますですよ。
ええ、信じてください。
Irie spoke to me with a serious look on his face. As Sadako's best friend, I felt relieved to hear his words. I'm sure he'll do his best to save Sadako's life. I have no doubt that he'll do so. I've seen him act like this in every life I have lived. I also know why he's so passionate to save her, but I'm not supposed to know about it in this life. That's why I always pretend not to see his sad smile.
そうだ、リカさん。月末にまた少し大掛かりな検査があります。
今度は僕がモルモットになる番なのですか？
そんなつもりは。医学に貢献していただいていますし、大勢の人を救うことにもなります。
Irie's guinea pig is not just Sadako, I'm also one of them. Although guinea pig is probably not the right term. Without Irie's efforts, Sadako would not be here today. For that reason, I should be showing respect to this man. I smiled at him since my choice of words had hurt his feelings.
僕を調べてサトコの治療に役立つのなら、僕がモルモットでもいいのです。
ご協力を感謝します。もう少し人と設備とお金があれば、これだけの負担をかけないのですが。
Next moment, the phone rang. Irie answered it in his usual business-like tone.
はい、もしもし、入江です。
東京から凱旋です。そちらへ回します。
I could hear the voice from the phone.
リサさんですね。もう今年もそんな時期になりましたか。電話は所長室で取りますから、そっちへ回してください。
No, okay, I'm not sure why this part isn't voiced. Absolutely, please hang up on this line in that case.
わかりました。リカさん、すみません。東京からの電話です。
いってらっしゃいなのですよ。
As soon as Irie hung up the phone in the other room started ringing. I left the examination room and headed towards the office. Annie returned to my side as soon as Irie left. Annie doesn't like to be around me when I'm talking with Irie. I don't think she dislikes him, it's just that she doesn't really want to hear what he has to say. Irie doesn't mean any harm, but Hanyu is often hurt by the things that come out of his mouth.
サトコの様子は？サトコは相変わらず間違い探しは下手くそなのです。僕の方がいっぱい見つけられましたのですよ。あんたの検査結果なんてどうでもいいでしょ。サトコの結果はどうなの？
Thought she was there to check on Sadako, but she was taking the quiz alongside her instead. So typical of Hanyu. She was treating it almost like a game, but Sadako was tired after taking the same quiz every week. She seemed sleepy, especially after waking up so early this morning. The quiz in this case wasn't about a right or wrong answer, it was about timing, in minutes, how long it took her to answer the question, observing how she acted during the quiz. Not all of the questions would be simple ones, so Sadako often got headaches, more so than even the spelling tests we take at
も
school.
うほとんど終わりなの？はいです。今高野が持っているのが最後の一冊なのですよ。
Takano was showing a book to Sadako with abstract pictures inside. I couldn't even tell if that was supposed to be a picture. It was just a symmetrical ink stain.
さあ、これで最後よ。これは何に見えるかしら？
Both Hanyu and I looked at the picture over Sadako's shoulders. Even I didn't know what to answer when looking at that strange ink stain.
と、と、
Sadako continued to think. Takano observed her taking notes while Sadako struggled. She was also timing how long it took her to answer, holding a stopwatch under the table. I spoke to Hanyu so only she could hear
羽
me.
生は何に見える？このシミ。ソフトクリームなのです。すべて落としてしまって地面にべっしゃりとなのです。もったいない。なるほど。実に相手の考えがわかるテストね。
To me, it looked like a horse mackerel that had been cut open and its guts pulled out. I was thinking of food too. It's rather shocking to learn that my thought process are the same as Hanyu's.
何に見えるかしら？思いつきでいいのよ。
Sadako must not be very good at this test. She always takes a long time to answer questions like this. She finally opened her mouth to speak.
2匹の蝶々が重なっている感じですわね。
2匹の蝶々が重なって。いいわよ。続けて。どうして蝶々は重なっているのかしら？
Takano continued to take notes as Sadako spoke. Curious about what she was writing, I looked, but... Is that German? Can't read it at all. Takano is so mean.
ずっと離れ離れで会えなかった蝶々がやっと一緒になれて喜んでるところごめんなさいですわね。私も何を言ってるのか自分でよくわかりませんわね。
いえ、そういう答え方でいいのよ。思いついたことが抽象的ならそのまま口にしてくれればいいの。そういう検査なんだから。
本当にこんなへんてこな絵の感想を言うだけで検査になりますの？
なるわよ。例えば今のこの絵だけど、去年のさとこちゃんは別な答えを出してるの。それを比べるだけでもこの1年のあなたの変化を測ることができるわよ。
なんだか嫌なテストですわね。去年の私はこの絵に何て答えたのでございますの？
Takano smiled and took a note without answering her question. I tried to remember what her answer was. I have more than 100 years worth of memories in my head. Hanyu might remember better than I do. As I looked at Hanyu, I realized she was standing there with a sad expression. I decided not to ask her. I could tell what kind of answer Sadako gave back then just by looking at Hanyu's face. Last year, June 1982, is when Sadako was being abused by her cruel aunt. Recalling that, I didn't even want to know what Sadako answered. But just a year later, Sadako was so worn down. The Sadako who was so worn down could no longer be seen. She became so strong. I know how difficult it was for her to stay tough and strong like this. Her growth over the past year is overwhelming to me.
検査終わりましたか？
Irie returned from his office.
終わりましたわ。
だいぶさとこちゃんも手際が良くなりましたわ。今日はだいぶ早く終わりましたのよ。
早く終わらせるように頑張ったんですもの。今日は用事がある日だからのんびりとはできませんのよ。
おや？今日は何かあるんですか？日曜日ではありませんでしたっけ？
今日はみんなでミーのおじさんのおもちゃ屋さんで部活があるのですよ。
なるほど。さとこちゃんが妙に今日はおとなしく検査に従ってくださると思いました。予定が詰まっていたんですね。それは悪いことをしました。ではさとこちゃん、これはいつものです。
Irie put a big paper bag on the table. He opened it up and gave her instructions about the medications. Sadako had heard the same instructions over and over before, but Irie still continued to talk just the same.
状態がいいようですので、お注射はこれまでの日に2回に戻します。昼食前と就寝前の2回に必ず注射をしてください。注射針は必ず変えるように。同じ針を2度使ってはいけませんよ。それからこちらは、どうしても体調が悪くなった時のみ食後に。
はいはいはい、いつもと同じですわよ。分かっていましたよ。
Sadako couldn't wait to meet our friends for the club activity. It made me feel happy to see her as excited as this.
注射2本に戻りましたのですよ。よかったのです。
The number of shots she has to take each day represents how well she's doing. So it's a good thing she has to take fewer
大変
shots.
よね。1日に2本も注射を打つのは。
And you grew quiet after hearing my comment. Irie handed her the paper bag after he finished his instructions.
リカ、終わりましたよ。
ええ、お疲れ様。検査中からずっとそわそわしてたからね。いってらっしゃいな。
すみませんわね、上の空で。いつも検査をしてくださって感謝していますのよ。
ほら、もう時間がないんじゃないの？私の車で送ろうかしら。そうそう。また車に新しいぬいぐるみがあるのよ。今度は約束通り、さとこちゃんが名前をつけてくれていいわよ。
あら、何のぬいぐるみでございますかしら。どんな名前にしようか迷いますわね。何の動物のぬいぐるみなんですの？
また猫なのよ。今度は虎島なの。可愛いからきっと気に入ってくれるわよ。
Sadako and Takano are good friends. They're both fond of stuffed animals. Every time Takano gets a new one, she brags about it to Sadako. That's all they have in common, but having a friend like Takano is a special thing for Sadako. He's part of the Hojo family who tried to betray the village. People at the clinic are the only adults who will even talk to Sadako. And I guess her teacher.
じゃあお二人とも部活行ってらっしゃい。罰ゲームが未定でしたら、ぜひメイド服の着用を提案してくださいね。サイズから種類までいろいろと取り揃えておりますので。
That's not creepy.
また来週お会いしましょう。
嫌なこったなのですよ。また来週なのです。さ、行きましょうですわ。今日は部活メンバーだけじゃありませんものね。腕が鳴りましたよ。
I bowed slightly and made to leave the examination room, but I soon realized something. Irie was looking at me with a sad expression on his face. Just with that look, I could tell what he wanted to say. Please take care of Sadako-chan if something happens to her. I nodded at him and stepped out into the hallway with Sadako.
やれやれ。検査は慣れても疲れますわね。検査、お嫌なのですか？めんどくさいから嫌ではありますけど、これも仕事ですもの。仕方ありませんわ。
Sadako is supporting Irie's research. She gets financial support by helping him out, or at least that's what Sadako thinks she's doing. So Sadako doesn't know that she has an incurable disease. Sadako was bursting with enthusiasm, so he headed to Okinomi at full speed. We wound up waiting for Keiichi and the other club members for a long time. We got here early, but they were late. I think they were late the last time we did this too. I mean, that was something that was meant to happen. It's unpleasant that I can't even change the most minor of fates. Finally saw them coming towards us on their bikes.
皆様方、お待ちしてましたよ。
Sadako acted like she was upset, but I could tell that she was pleased to see them just the same.
さとこが可愛いのですよ。そこが飽きないのよ。可愛すぎる。
Sadako's behavior soothes my feelings of frustration. That's why I love Sadako. If she was a small, fluffy animal, I would definitely keep her in a cage. Please don't keep the children in the cage.
おはようございますなのです。
お リカちゃん。サトコ、警察が来る前にケリをつけるぞ。目標は10億強奪だ。
圭一さんの話がわかりませんわ。遅くなったかな。リカちゃんたちは今来たの？今日は早く終わったのでだいぶ待ってましたですよ。
Mion and Rena know that Sadako gets a checkup every Sunday at the clinic.
そりゃ悪いことしたわ。こっちはケイちゃんがなかなか来なくてさ。
At Keiichi. So he's the reason they're always
圭
late.
一では仕方ありませんですよ。ミパ
ちょい待て。俺が悪役になりゃ丸く収まるのかよ。
ー。もちろん圭一さんでなくては務まらない大役でしたよ。
実に嫌な大役だな。こんなので丸く収まると思ったら大間違いだぞ。
Keiichi and Sadako messed around with each other. It sounds like more than messing with each other. Sadako acted like she was crying, and Rena punched Keiichi, knocking him out cold. It's the same old situation they always got into. I can watch this sort of thing forever. Like having a glass of cold milk after taking a hot bath.
やっぱりこれが正しい。
前歯が欠ける前に新しいオチを探した方がいいと思うけどね。
We all laughed at him and finished greeting each other.
今日もみんなとっても元気なのです。
元気に勝る宝はないわね。
そんなこと言ってるとリカはどんどん老け込んじゃいますのです。
うるさいな。誰のせいだと思ってんのよ。当分甘いものを食べるのやめるわよ。
Honey seemed to be getting more depressed than usual. I should stop teasing her so much.
冗談だからあんまりひっつかないで。
ごめんなさいなのです。
Honey loves sweet treats. She especially loves cake and ice cream. Since she can't eat anything, she has to depend on me when it comes to that. In other words, whatever I eat, Anya can taste too. Even if Anya craves something, it doesn't mean anything if I don't eat it. In other words, I have total control of what she eats. That's why it's fun to tease her and say what I'll eat and what I won't. It's almost as fun as teasing Sadako.
リカちゃんは今日もご機嫌だね。お持ち帰り。
はいはい。お持ち帰ったら犯罪だからね。
ミオン、店のおじさんが呼んでるぜ。
リカ、聞きまして。今日の部活、賞金が出るんだそうですのよ。
I remember. Mion was going to be paying 50,000 yen out of her pocket as a prize. I couldn't believe she could just afford that. It's about $500 in 1983. Therefore, I have to assume she has some kind of guarantee that she won't lose.
なんと5万円でしたよ。5万円。
Sadako stared at me. Oh no. She was expecting me to be surprised when I heard that the prize was 50,000 yen. Naturally, to be surprised after hearing that sum, but I didn't react because I already knew it. Perhaps I gave the impression that I've known it for a long time.
ケイチさん、5万円なんてすごい賞金と思いませんですこと？
5万円？なんだよそれ。ケイイチ王国の5年分の GNP に匹敵するぞ。
Sadako said the same thing to Keiichi. She probably assumed that I wasn't listening to her, so she decided to talk to Keiichi instead.
小さなミスよ。大丈夫。
5万円もあれば、もうずっと使い切れないくらいのお醤油が買えますです。なんで5万円分もお醤油を買わないといけないんですの？お醤油を買ってきてと言ってもめんどくさがる人がいるからなのですよ。ミパー。リカって結構根に持ちますのね。
5万円分の醤油って一体どのくらいだよ。すげえ量になりそうだな。
Keiichi joined the conversation, which finally brought us back to our normal pace. In order to pursue a greater happiness, I need to sacrifice a smaller one. In a perfect world, Rika Furude was supposed to be surprised to hear from her best friend that the prize was 50,000 yen, but I already knew that. I knew it from my previous lives, so all I could do was give her a boring reaction. I can't be surprised at the big prize of 50,000 yen. I can't give her the reaction that she expects from me. I'm losing the ability to be surprised by life. After the continual repetition of small incidents like this, there will be nothing left that I can find interesting. I'll have nothing to be surprised about. I'll never be impressed with anything. Eventually I'll lose my emotions entirely. That's why I'm always trying to be careful. I make sure I act like the Rika Furude who doesn't know anything. Even though I may not be impressed as a young girl, Rika Furude should be impressed with many things. Rika Furude is supposed to act excited when she encounters something for the first time. I try to, at least. The more and more I try, the more I feel like Rika Furude is someone very distant.
リカ、ごめん。こういうことで感情を灰色にすると、また寿命が縮んじゃうわね。世界をもっと楽しまなきゃ。
I don't mean my lifespan literally. I'm not referring to the physical lifespan, but my mental one. The more and more I repeat the same days, the more I lose. From wonder to passion, and eventually my life will become like an overplayed videotape. I'm tired of that tape. I have a choice to close my eyes and sleep. By the time I wake up, the video should be over. But in reality, my life is not a beat-up old videotape. If I close my eyes and sleep, that would be my death. When my mental lifespan is over, Rika Furude will turn into a doll who can't even move a finger by her own will. When that happens, my pursuit of happiness will be over. And I don't want that to happen. It's been at least 100 years, if not more. I've been stuck in this living hell for so long, and I don't want my life to end here.
もう大丈夫。100年程度で愚痴ってたら、あんたに笑われちゃうものね。僕はもう運命に慣れていますのですから。よし、大丈夫。私はフルでリカ。私はフルでリカ。
I don't stay focused on being Rika Furude. I'm afraid I might end up showing my true self inside of that shell. Rika Furude is supposed to be a cute and innocent little girl after all.
レナだったら5万円で何を買いますですか？ランディ君人形とか売ってもらえないのかな？沖宮のチェーン店に5万円持ってったら売ってくれないかな？その5万円で鎖を切る工具と第8車を買った方が早いと思いますです。レナさんだったら素手で鎖を引きちぎりかねませんわね。
違いない違いない。
ひどい。
Thus, we rejoin the typical flow of conversation naturally. Once I enter the flow, it's not hard for me to continue as Rika Furude. Being Rika Furude is like flying a kite for me. Once it's up in the air, I can stay in the sky for a while. If something happens and it loses control, it's one heck of a challenge to get it back on track. Every time it tries to get back up in the air, the kite gets dragged on the ground and wears out. I'm exactly like that. Finally, Mion started clapping her hands to get everyone's attention. I already knew the rules. The members will be broken into 5 different groups, and each group plays a game that they chose together. I was secretly hoping that Mion would change the rules for some reason. There's nothing more boring than to already know what was going to
イオン
happen.
の部活って割と気まぐれなことが多いもの。ひょっとするとルールは違うこともあるかも。普段ならそういうこともあると思いますですが、今日はきっと何日も前から計画していたことだと思うのです。強い意志は運命になりやすい。だったわね。
Normally when we're doing club activities, Mion decides what to play at the last minute. She opens her locker and randomly decides what game to play. For that reason, our club activities are rarely repeated throughout my lives. That's why I'm never bored with them. But just as Hanyu said, today's event was something that Mion had been planning for a while. I was certain she wouldn't suggest anything spontaneously today. In that case, this won't be up to random chance. Mion had only one idea in her mind, therefore it was equivalent to destiny. Although her idea of having this event in the toy store is actually a spontaneous one. All the lives I've repeated, there's a very low chance for this event to occur.
だから、あまりそういうのは期待しない方がいいのです。期待してるわけじゃないわ。
Of course, I was lying just now. I was hoping that Mion would suggest a new rule for this game. It was the same rules again. I'd be suffering for a few minutes while I listened to her instructions. Nothing is more frustrating than walking the same path over and over again. Please, Mion, please change my fate. Please.
まずはくじ引きで5つの卓に分かれるよ。そして各卓から1人の勝者を出して。
It was the same rules after all.
ちょっと期待した。変な期待はかえって理科を傷つけますですよ。そうね。何度も教えられてるのに私も学ばないわね。
And he was taught me so many times. She taught me the trick to swimming in the flow of destiny. Flow of destiny is just like a river's. By going with the flow, I can swim the direction I want to some extent. Of course, trying to swim against the flow requires great effort. Allowing myself to drift causes the least amount of strain. Of course, some strong currents are impossible to resist even with great effort. If I recklessly try without realizing it's impossible, then I'll only wear myself out needlessly, just as if fighting a river's current. So Hanyu taught me to read those currents, which is why I should have easily imagined that the rules would be the same the moment I learned Mion had planned today's event in advance. Yet I still wish for the rules to be different, a completely wasteful action. And my hopes were betrayed, only leaving my heart worn out. Things like that caused me to separate further from Rika Furude. Eventually I'll grow tired of everything, lose all interest, and die.
抗えない運命は受け入れる。理科なら運命の流れを読むことができますですよ。そうよね。ただでさえ短い残りの寿命。大事にしないとね。
I sighed and pretended as though I was listening to what Mion was explaining.
どうしたんだリカちゃん、退屈なのか？
Keiichi surprised me all of a
退屈っ
sudden.
て僕がですか？
This had never happened before, so I thought he was talking to someone else. It seemed like Keiichi was really talking to me.
なんか今朝は会ってからずっと退屈そうな顔をしてるからさ。ひょっとして早起きしすぎて寝不足なのか？
前に同じ部活をやったことがあるので、またなのかと思っただけなのです。
No one would understand what I mean anyway, but Keiichi might. So I told him how I honestly felt.
なんだそうなのか？なんだミオンめ、道理で手慣れてると思ったぜ。まあ俺は初めての参加だから十分楽しみだけどな。
I envied him for feeling that way. I sighed, knowing that I never will.
確かにすでに知ってる説明を延々と繰り返されると苦痛な時ってあるよな。俺も昔塾で学校のだいぶ先まで習っててさ、遅れて習う学校が苦痛だったことがあるよ。
Keiichi didn't understand me, but I'm glad he at least understood how frustrating it was to repeat the same
そ
situation.
うなのです。僕も学校は特に苦痛なのですよ。
え？本当かよ。いつも楽しそうにしてるじゃないかよ。
Rika Furude is supposed to be happy at school. That's why I act that
すで
way.
に知っていることを延々と聞き続けなければならないのは拷問以外の何者でもないと思いますのです。
It's easy for me to change what Sadako cooks for dinner. I can simply volunteer to cook instead of her. I can't change what the teacher teaches at school every day. I have no choice but to be quiet and listen to her lecture.
まあ授業はどうしようもないよな。俺はそこを塾で習ってますから、その次をやってくださいなんて。でもこいつは違うぜ。遊びじゃないか。
遊びではありますが決まってるのですよ。
わかんねえぜ。だって5択に分かれるのはくじ引きだそうじゃないか。しかもそれぞれの択で何のゲームをやるかは任意に決めることになってる。今日どんなゲームで戦わされてどんな展開で盛り上がるかなんか全然想像がつかねえぜ。
予想はつきますですよ。
そんなことねえよ。
Keiichi smiled as he contradicted me. Smile seemed so
く
ignorant
じ
to
引
me.
きで5択に分かれますですが、部活メンバーはきれいに5択に分かれますです。圭一はあそこ。 僕はそこの卓なのです。そして僕は魚釣りのゲームをすることになります。圭一はすごろくの100億長者ゲームなのです。
I don't know how, but the last time we were broken into 5 separate groups. It couldn't have been a coincidence. I'm sure Mion did something to ensure it would end up like that. I'm 100% sure. As for the games we play, I'm not totally sure, but if each member in the group follows the same thinking patterns, they'll probably end up making the same choices. We roll dice many times, begin to approach the average. One person's spontaneous act can be random, but multiple people's thoughts can be averaged out for the most part. The more people that are involved, the more difficult it is to alter the path of fate, so I'm pretty sure that we'll end up playing the same games. Keiichi seems surprised to hear my prediction.
予言か？よくそこまで言い切れるじゃねえか。
運命とはそういうものなのです。
へへ、運命なんて言われるとよ、意地でも抗ってみたくなるのが男ってもんだよな。
He smiled at me again. I knew that he was just smiling without reason, but I felt a small hope from him. After all, Keiichi really did shatter fate before. That was just a miracle that happened in my previous life. I can expect him to do the same thing in this one. Otherwise, I would be worn down by my high expectations again.
はい、くじ引きはこの箱の中から1枚引いて決めよう。まず部活メンバーからね。
Mion drew first, then Sadako followed. Results were the same as last time.
初戦で部活メンバーとは当たりたくねえな。もしリカちゃんと当たったらごめんよ。
当たりませんですよ。圭一の卓はあそこ。僕の卓はそこなのです。
ちぇ、そううまくいってたまるかよ。うりゃ。
Keiichi looked upset.
僕の予言は外れないのです。
5択の一つってことは 20% だもんな。適当に言ったってそれだけの確率で当たるってことさ。
Keiichi told me it was just coincidence.
僕のくじも予想通りだったなら何%の確率になりますですか
？20% の 20% だから 4% だな。さすがにこの確率だったら信じてもいいぜ。
Keiichi grinned at me, believing such a chance was impossible.
さあ、最後はリカちゃんだよ。
Mion handed me the box of slips. No matter what I did, I'd be getting that table. There was a reason behind it. Mion was doing something to make sure we'd all get a different table. I thought about why Mion would do that. With all the information I've gathered about Mion over many years, I could see her reasoning.
多分ミオンは部活のメンバーの誰かが1回戦で負けてしまったら気の毒だと思っているのでしょう。そうね。同じ卓に部活メンバーがぶつかり合ったらどちらかのメンバーは必ず敗退することに。
If everyone was in a different group, we'd all have a chance to move on to the second stage. That was why she was controlling this draw. I put my hand inside of the box. I could feel several pieces of paper folded up inside, but if you thought for a moment, it was odd. No matter which one I chose, I'd never get any other table.
どういう仕掛けでリカを最後の卓へ送るようにしているのですか？さあ、それはミオンに聞かないとわからないわね。でも一つ言えるのは、多分この箱の中のどれを引いてもあの卓になると書いてあるはず。
Ah, I got it.
その箱の中には今同じくじしか入っていない？そういうことになるわね。多分ミオンの持つこの箱は何か細工がしてあるんでしょうね。
Probably a box for a magic show or something. Be some kind of gimmick inside the box, and she can switch what's inside of it. Depending on who's drawing the paper, she'd change out the lots and control the result. Didn't know exactly how. I'm sure she was doing something. I didn't even need to know how she was doing it. The most important thing was why.
どれにしようか迷いますです。
さあさあ、どれを選んでも運命は一緒だよ。
She was admitting it herself. I was certain then. Based on what I felt inside, there were less than 10 pieces of paper inside this box. In other words, there were hidden pieces of paper that I couldn't touch somewhere inside the box. I smiled at Mion as I figured out her trick, but she had no clue why I was smiling.
これなのです。
はいよ、どれどれ。おお、すごいね。部活メンバーが全員きれいに分かれたよ。
Mion behaved as though this was news to her. She's such an actress. The other contestants made a dissatisfied noise. They'd have to face a club member no matter which table they got. Keiichi was surprised too, not only because we were divided.
運命は決まっていることなのです。
I smiled at him in return. Keiichi was in denial for a moment, but then he smiled back at me. Why is it so late? Because time's a thing?
やるじゃねえか。
Also, I hate to be the one to tell people, at least for me, this is the weekend where we have daylight savings time and you lose an hour of sleep. So I'm not excited for that. It was not. I predicted that Mion and Sadako would be at a different table, so the probability was even lower than that. Keiichi understood that, but normal people like him can't understand the meaning of fate. You hate time? Yeah. Yeah. At least it's turning to the half of the year where I prefer the time, where it's lighter in the evening and darker in the morning. That's my preferred one, but I'm not jazzed for losing that hour of sleep. That's why I put it off as a coincidence. But Keiichi, what if my prediction is right about what game you'll be playing? Possibility will be 1 in billions. I think that was supposed to be a pun because the game he's playing is called Billionaire. There's a lot of games in the store. What if that prediction is right too? Will he still believe it's just a coincidence? I stayed quiet in my seat and waited to see what game my group was going to decide on. They were going to choose the fishing game. I can't expect them to choose anything other than
期待
that.
して裏切られたらまた辛くなるものね。
One of the boys stood up. He walked towards the shelf full of games and picked up one box. He lifted the box above his head and turned around so he could show it to us. I closed my eyes as he did so, but I could still hear what he was saying.
これこれ懐かしいよな。これにしねえか。
知ってるよそれ。魚がくるくる回って口をパクパクさせるのを釣るやつだろ。
I could taste the bitter chemicals from my brain in my mouth. I clenched my lips and tried to endure the numbing feeling.
ごめん。今日は体調が悪いのかしらね。なぜかうまく受け流せないわ。
It wasn't because I wasn't feeling well, of course. It's because of my emotions. Our powers are getting weaker and we can only rewind about 2 weeks of our lives. I was feeling that the end was near for us. In order for me to change my tragic fate, I needed more time to prepare. But I can only go back 2 weeks. That means my power to resist my fate has significantly weakened. Even if I became as weak as a small leaf in the river, I should be able to do something in order to change my path. But if I can only go back to the point where I'm getting ready to be swallowed into the whirlpool, there's no chance for me to escape it. I lived for so long believing that I could eventually escape my fate and survive. I believed that I had a chance in every moment of every life I lived. There are limits to those chances. There's so many limits in my repeated lives, and perhaps this might be my last chance. That may be why I'm feeling so restless.
ダメです、リカ。難しく考えれば考えるほど心に良くないのです。わかってるわよ。ちょっと黙ってて。あうあうあうあうあう。
My brain was numb, as if surrounded by a gray mist. I was inside the crowded toy store, but felt very far away from everyone else. The tighter I closed my eyes and the harder I clenched my teeth, the emptier my head became. No, no, no.
リカ、リカ、しっかり。
As I tried to focus, I became conscious again. Anya looked at me with concern. I tend to lose my mind easily right after coming back from death. I usually have more time to relax and get used to my new life, but I have no time for that now. The Watanagashi Festival is only 2 weeks away. I can't just relax and wait for myself to get used to things. You're gonna head off to bed? No worries, Samuses. Have a fantastic evening. And yes, I am telling you what to do. Don't be a wimp, Rika. Don't be a wimp. Fight against fate. But even if I do, that fate always betrays me and I grieve. But what if I did the opposite? What if I didn't fight against fate? A few weeks after the Watanagashi Festival in 1983, I will die because I'm fated to do so. Fight, don't fight, fight, don't fight, fight, don't fight, fight, don't fight. Games, stop making me repeat words. Fight, don't fight, fight, don't fight, fight, don't fight, fight, don't fight, fight, don't fight. As I repeated the same words, they started to lose all meaning. I felt like I was chanting something. Dang it, Samus. I bit my tongue in my mind and forced myself to stop thinking about it. I didn't know your mind had a tongue. I was calming down a little bit. I opened my eyes. I saw the fishing game right in front of me, as well as my pole. Someone placed it there while I had my eyes closed. It was as if I was seeing the immovable reality of fate right in front of me. It felt like a final verdict to me. What do you think, Keiichi? Is this what fate is all about? Do I want to earn his agreement or his sympathy? I stood up and walked towards Keiichi's table. His group couldn't decide on a game, so the store owner was deciding for them. Just like the last time, the store owner will pick the game of life. They didn't even hide it this time. They called it Billionaires, and then this time they're like, yeah, it's Game of Life. We're not even ripping it off anymore.
やっぱり相手の提案するゲームじゃ不利だもんな。なんて言って互いの提案を蹴り合うもんだからちっとも決まりゃしねえんだ。リカちゃんの方は決まったのか？
見ればわかりますですよ。
I looked at my table and saw the fishing game there. Keiichi was surprised that my prediction was right again. He also remembered that I predicted his game too.
マスターはリカちゃんの予言した100億長者ゲームを持ってくるっていうのかよ。
僕は時々予言もできますのですよ。ミパー。
本当かよ、おい。よしよし。じゃあマスターが本当に100億長者ゲームを持ってきたなら信じてやるぜ。
そうです。ケイイチたちは100億長者ゲームで戦うことになりますです。
よしよし。そこまで言うなら勝負。あ、マスターを買収してあるなんてのはなしだぞ。
マスターが売れ残りのゲームを持ってこようと強く思っているなら必然の結果になりますのです。
Remember, it was covered by dust when he gave it to them last time. Since we had to buy the game if we lost, he was willing to sell products he had a surplus of. Therefore, he won't be choosing any game at random. He'll be looking for the one with bad sales. The strong will to do so. That will of his is going to make the pull of fate all the stronger. In that sense, there's no guarantee that he'll be choosing the game of life specifically. He might choose something else that's overstocked. The owner finally reappeared with a box covered in dust.
ね、言った通りなのですよ。
He has a Game of Life box in his hands. Part of me that hoped it wouldn't be the Game of Life tasted bitterness at the betrayal, but the cynical part of me that expected it to happen found it amusing in a way. I felt like my personality was twisting more and more.
マスター、どうしてそのゲームを選んだんです？
ん？いやいや、本当に気まぐれだよ。倉庫の在庫から適当に探し出したのさ。決して売れ残りの一番傷んだやつを持ってきたわけじゃないんだよ。
When you heard that the owner chose the game randomly, Keiichi shrugged his shoulders in confusion. That must be his way of
なあ、
surrendering.
リカちゃん、これってマジの予言なのか？
ミパ
いやさ、村のお年寄りにリカちゃんはお社様の生まれ変わりで神通力があるって力説されたことがあるんだよ。未来の予言とかができてものすごい的中率だとかなんとか。それって本当なのか？
I was surprised that Keiichi actually believed the superstitious stories he heard from the elderly
ー。決まってい
villagers.
る運命を読むだけなのです。もっと言えば前に一度見てきた世界なのですから。
チェックソ、ここまで当てられちゃそんなバカなとも言えやしない。
Keiichi seemed like he was just fooling around. He probably only thinks I'm goofing around acting haughty because my random predictions all came true. I had hope for him. Thought the owner might bring a different game because Keiichi once had the power to change fate. But that didn't happen. I'm not surprised, but I felt betrayed again. It
だ
hurts.
けは僕の勝ちなのですよ。
I speak to Keiichi sarcastically, want him to understand that no one can change the path of fate. However, Keiichi did nothing but smile.
調子に乗るなよ、リカちゃん。 運命を読めるなんていい加減なことを言っちゃいけないぜ。男にとって宿命と運命という言葉はもっともっと尊くて熱い意味がこもってるんだ。そんなやすやすと読めるようなもんじゃねえ。
I had no idea what he was trying to say, but he made me nervous. It wasn't a scary feeling. No, it was closer to hope.
さっきリカちゃんはマスターが100億長者ゲームを持ってくることを運命だと言った。偶然であったとしても的中したのだからリカちゃんが正しいと言わざるを得ないさ。でもな、こうも言ったよな。
何ですか？
俺が100億長者ゲームで戦うことも運命だってな。
Yes, it was indeed his fate. Fate can change sometimes with uncertainty and time. The possibility that it would change in this situation was very slight. I doubted that anything would turn out differently.
なら、その運命とやらを俺がぶち壊してやろうじゃないか。
Keiichi stood up in a hurry. He started talking to Tomita and Okumura, his group members.
すまん、俺100億長者ゲームは持ってるんだよ。だからルールの裏の裏まで知り尽くしてる。
そうなんですか？
ああ、だからこのセレクトはフェアじゃないよな。マスター、申し訳ないんですけど、100億長者ゲームの隣に置いてあった他のゲームに変えてもらえませんか？
そうかい？わかったよ。じゃあ他のを持ってこよ
The owner picked up the game of life again and took it back into storage. As I remained there in shock, he returned with the game called Pop-Up Pirate.
これならどうかな。
あの樽にナイフを刺すゲームですよね。
I'm pretty sure that's the real name of it too. They're just not concealing any of these.
これならフェアだろ。
そうですね。ルールもわかりやすいし、それにしましょう。
じゃあ決まり。俺たちの卓はこれで勝負だ。
Keiichi winked at me as I stood there with my mouth open. It looked like he just forcefully changed my prediction, but for me, it's not that simple. It's supposed to be fate. That's why the owner brought the game of life to their table. They were supposed to play that game. That's what happened the last time. That's what was supposed to happen, but he just changed that fate in front of my eyes like it was nothing. As if someone asked me to stand an egg on its end, and I struggled to do so, Keiichi forcefully cracked the egg and made it stand in front of me. I should have had a far greater power than Keiichi, but why was I feeling so weak? Was it because I wasn't trying to fight against fate, so I wouldn't get hurt? Because I was going to keep with the flow without trying too hard? What was I thinking?
リカちゃんさ、さっきすっげえつまらなさそうな顔してたよな。それってあれだろ？魚釣りゲームじゃ嫌だなって不安が的中しちゃってふてくされてたんだろ？
そうね。今さら隠さない。
じゃあ簡単じゃないか。
So I'm a witch who's been living more than 100 years? So I thought I was better than everyone just because I can see the paths of fate? That's stupid. I really am so stupid. Keiichi tapped me on the back. He was urging me to return to my table. The sensation of his touch filled my heart with emotion. I wasn't going to stand idly by anymore. I thought I couldn't cheat fate. I thought 2 weeks wasn't enough, but Keiichi just defied his fate in a matter of 5 minutes.
僕は魚釣りゲームはお魚さんがかわいそうだと思いますので、他のゲームにしたいのですよ。
The other people at my table looked at me with confused expressions. Their reactions were scaring me. Right at that moment, I could really feel that I was facing the impenetrable wall of fate. Even so, I have nothing to be scared of.
じゃあ、リカちゃんは何がいい？リカちゃんの提案する他のゲームでいいよ。
They accepted my suggestion and gave up on the fishing game so easily. That's right, I used to be much more aggressive before, but I became so tired and bitter and mean, I gave in to fate. I'm not going to yield anymore. Keiichi taught me that. I didn't have any memories from his previous life. Keiichi was still Keiichi, he'd never given to fate.
久しぶりに運命と戦おうという気力が充実するのを感じるわ。やる気があれば、ものの5分でだって運命は変えられる。それが2週間もあるんだもの。今回はこれまでとは違う。もっともっと運命と戦ってみせる。頑張りましょうなのです。
In contrast to my motivation, Honey was still wearing a sad expression.
そっか。おじさんの店の手伝いってんじゃ仕方ねえな。
ささやかなお店だけどね。でもさ、特売やれば主婦が殺到するの常識で読めないのかね。店員足りないのに卵1パックをお一人様1点限り10円なんてやるな。
So we're getting ready to move on to the next stage. Mion got a call from work. This was fated to happen too. I was still feeling depressed. I would have been disgusted with the situation, but after learning what it felt like to change fate, I was in a good mood. Keiichi and Mion seemed like they were regretting that they were unable to settle the match. They really are such good friends.
本当にあの二人は仲がいいね。仲良しさんすぎてレナは焼いちゃうよ。はお。うちのクラスにはケイイチさんと近い年の男子がいませんものね。ケイイチさんにはちょうどいい男友達の感覚なんじゃありませんの？それでもみーちゃんは女の子なんだよ。男の子にはなれないよ。それは分かってますけど、こうしていると仲のいい男子同士にしか見えませんわね。
Ren and Sadako enjoyed the lingering excitement of the day as they watched Mion and Keiichi happily goof off. Next moment, the owner came out of the store. So this is an important moment because this is the moment that makes Chapter 2 and later Chapter 4 happen. Or, no, Chapter 2 and Chapter 5. He was holding 4 paper bags in his hands. I remember he gave us gifts as a reward for today. I think there were dolls inside.
吉郎おじさん、私にはないの？おだちん。
He's giving them only to us. Mion didn't get anything because she was a family member. That's what happened last time, too.
あらあらあら。可愛いのが出てきましたわよ。
Sadako let out a cheer of joy as she saw a cute doll inside of her bag. Rena reacted the same way.
これかわいい。お持ち帰りしていいの？本当に？
ってことは俺のもかな。お、なんだかやたら可愛いのが出てきたぞ。
She got a gorgeous, expensive-looking doll. It was by far the best one. It was adorable even to my eyes. Sadako, Ren, and Mion were all feeling the same way.
ケイちゃんには一番似合わないのが出てきちゃったね。
Mion started making fun of him right away. She was only saying that because she was jealous that Keiichi got a doll that she really wanted.
なんつうのか、プリティっていうかキュートっていうか可愛いのは認めるんだが、着せ替え人形はちょっとな。
ケイちゃんが持ってたら確実に明日から変な趣味の人扱いだね。うん。
Mion just can't be honest with herself. It's obvious that she's trying to make him give up the doll so that she could have it herself. She should just admit that and ask Keiichi for it. That's the cute side of Mion. I bet Keiichi can never understand that. Keiichi can't keep the doll after receiving that much bullying from Mion. He was thinking about who he should give it to. He probably didn't want to give it to Mion. Time froze for a moment. Honey whispers something in my ear.
リカ、覚えていますですか？ええ。
Okay, so we're gonna save here. At this, I wasn't aware this had choice points because it usually gives you the option of do you want the choice points, yes or no. Also, interestingly enough, the choice points actually save in the inverse color effect. So whatever is happening here where the inverted color doesn't actually appear here on the save file. And then you get this weird blue text here that's actually really hard to read. That's interesting. That probably means that it's they have a generic effect that gets applied to the screen as a whole and doesn't get applied to the save thumbnails. Anyways, we know what the wrong answer is, so we're going to pick that. Also, it's interesting that this story is told in the past tense. It was, I advised him or I did nothing. I thought about telling Keiichi to give the doll to Mion, but I stayed quiet because I wanted to believe in him. When we were in the same situation in previous life, Keiichi gave the doll to Rena. Mion was deeply hurt by that, and the tragedy began shortly after that. If I didn't do anything and just watched him now, things were going to end up the same way. But I'm sure that Keiichi deeply regretted the fact that he didn't give the doll to Mion in that previous world. While I was aware he didn't have any memories from that world, I was hoping that his heart vaguely remembered that strong emotion. I challenged him without telling him anything. Keiichi is contemplating whether he should give the doll to Mion or Rena. He finally opens his mouth.
Mion,
Oh, did we pick the wrong one for once?
そんなことは知らないよ。まあお人形なんて男の子の持つものじゃないよねって言っただけだしさ。
ほう。じゃあお前が持てば万事解決じゃないか。ほれ。
This is the first time we picked the wrong answer. Keiichi tossed the doll to Mion as if passing her a basketball, as if forcing her to carry his bag or something. Mion's face quickly turned red. Feeling shy, Keiichi turned away from her. That was amazing. Keiichi just made a miracle happen again. He did it without any memory of his previous life. It was exactly the same situation as the previous world, but he made a totally different decision.
Keiichi. Rika, 確率的なものかもしれない
Okay, we're
の
gonna
ですよ。
save and boot up. So this is the correct path. I'm gonna save it in this slot anyways, just in case. And we're gonna load that save. I remembered that Keiichi's insensitive decision eventually caused a fatal ending. That was fate. Keiichi was internally thinking that he should give the doll to Mion. She was the only one who didn't get anything, so it would be natural for him to give it to her. But the hesitation he was feeling was because Mion was such a close friend to him, and treating Mion as if she was a male friend. It would be weird to give a doll to another boy. He was afraid that if he gave the doll to Mion, he would start looking at her as a girl from that point onward. He wanted to continue his friendship with Mion without thinking about their difference in gender. He didn't want to ruin the relationship they had at that moment. That's why he couldn't give the doll to Mion. Even though she was the only one without a doll, he felt so hesitant. Of course, that was only how he felt. Mion didn't agree. In actuality, she wished he would treat her more like a girl. I walked closer to Keiichi so I could talk to him. If Mion heard me talking to Keiichi to give her the doll, she would resist taking it. I had to make sure that no one but Keiichi could hear me. Also, to make this very quick, I poked Keiichi in the back.
Huh?
Keiichi, the person who really wants that doll is the one who's bullying you most about it. I'm gonna say that. Keiichi opened his mouth first, even before I could say anything to him.
Ah, わかってるって。
I hadn't said anything to him yet, but Keiichi told me that he knew. I felt confused, not knowing what he meant. He turned around to face Mion, smiling mischievously.
Mion, 俺が持ってると変な趣味なら。
Thanks, game, for the illusion of choice. So it didn't matter what we picked. There's the answer.
そんなことは知らないよ。まあお人形なんて男の子の持つものじゃないよねって言った。
ほう。じゃあお前が持てば万事解決じゃないか。ほれ。
I think from the anime point of view, this one we just did where she tries to intervene is the canon choice. Although I personally like the first one where we believe in him and we trust in our friends, because that's a big theme in this series, is trusting your friends. So I'm going with the fact that we picked the other answer, and that's the canon choice we have decided. I'm skipping through this dialogue because it's identical. Except for this. He got a message just by a tap on the shoulder. Was Keiichi always that smart? Just one tap was all it took. I don't think he would have done the same in a previous life. This was just a small incident. This world is definitely different from the previous one. Or could it be... Perhaps he would have given that doll to Mion even if I didn't poke him in the back. Yeah, he would have.
受け継いでいる。まさか。
This is slightly different.
そんなことあるわけがないのです。
I know for a fact that he doesn't have those memories, but there might be something imperceptible somewhere inside his heart. He might remember some of the regrets he felt in the previous worlds. That's why he strongly felt that he should be giving the doll to Mion this time. After repeating so many lives, I'm the only one who can even notice the slight growth of his, but I see it. It's clearly visible to me. Okay, I don't know if there's anything different between these, so I'm going to save them here separately. I'm going to load up the original one, because that's going to be our canon run.
リカ、確率的なものかもしれないのですよ。
Strong will is directly related to fate. His will to give the doll to Rena was weak. This might have been a result of that. I don't feel it was just a coincidence. I believe that Keiichi remembers something in his heart. Because of that, he made some progress. Mion, having turned red, insisted that the cute doll would be a much better fit for Rena. Her attitude made it clear that she really wanted the doll, but couldn't be honest about it.
だからさ、おじさん、こういう可愛いお人形はさ、ちゃんとした可愛い女の子に渡した方が似合うと思うんだよね。私みたいなアウトドア系に渡してもほら、人形の方がかわいそうというか。
欲しいくせに顔に書いてあるじゃねえかよ。
違う、書いてなんかないよ。嘘つき、意地悪。
Mion shook her head with an embarrassed look, pretending she wasn't interested in the doll. Everyone here knew that she wanted it. We all looked at Mion with big smiles on our faces.
おいおい、別に女の子じゃないと人形は渡せないとか、そういう考え方じゃねえぞ。こいつは俺と今日の部活で熱い睨み合いをしてくれた親友への贈り物なんだぜ。
そうなの？ケイちゃんは男の子の友達にも人形を渡すわけ？
まあ確かに選べる範囲があるならわざわざ人形は選ばねえな。でもよ、男の世界じゃ相手に悪意がない限り贈り物は拒まねえぜ。相手の気持ちなんだからよ。変に断られるとかえって男気がないよな。
じゃあ女の子でなくても人形を受け取ってもいいんだ。
Everyone thought Mion's reaction was hilarious. Brenna couldn't stop chuckling, and Sadako and I burst out laughing too. Mion, having realized she was being laughed at, got even more embarrassed.
男が仲間に送ったもんだぜ。大事にしなかったら承知しないぞ。
おじさんがこの人形が欲しいからもらうんじゃないよ。ケイちゃんが仲間に送るって言ったから、ケイちゃんの顔を立てるために受け取るんだからね。
Andi was cracking up too. She was laughing in a loud voice, knowing that no one could hear her anyway. Was this really a good way to resolve the problem? I thought that Mion's issue in the previous life was that she wanted Keiichi to treat her like a girl. Got the doll, but Keiichi still wasn't treating her that way. Still, Mion looked very happy. Maybe it wasn't a big deal after all. I'm sure that Mion will take the doll with her to bed tonight. She'll kiss it goodnight too. I can bet on that. It was written all over her face.
ようやく受け取ってくれたぜ。人形1個渡すのに手間のかかるやつだぜ。
Keiichi turned around to face us, smiling bitterly.
ケイチくん100点満点かな。僕もそう思いますです。あの意地っ張りのミオンによくお人形を渡せましたです。ミオンさんも笑っちゃいますわね。欲しいってあんなに顔に書いてあるのに痩せ我慢なんかしちゃって。
違いねえな。
こら！おじさんの陰口を言ってるでしょ！こら！
みーちゃん、バイト急がなくていいの？遅刻しちゃうよ。
もう覚えてなよ。
Mion seemed like she wanted to stay longer, but after looking at her watch, she started heading to work. Everyone was wearing smiles on their faces. Today was such a fun day. Everyone had lots of fun and no one was hurt. Repeated this same day so many times before, but this time something was different. It's like I rolled a die and got a 6, then I rolled it again and got a 6 again. I don't know if this was just a lucky coincidence or if it was meant to be. It's as if the god of fate is celebrating my motivation to fight against him. Okay, we got one tip. Oh, they even called the Steam achievement the game of life. Oh, you can actually see that on the stream. In the past, you weren't able to see those. Good times with Oyashiro-sama. I was watching TV with Sadako and Hanyu after eating dinner. It was a variety show and the performers were making the audience laugh. We were laughing too.
ざまあないでございますわね。はうはうはう。でも、とっても痛そうなのです。みぱー。
The three of us were enjoying ourselves. In reality, there was only Sadako and me in the room. I'm the only one who can see Hanyu. Sadako can't see her at all. Hanyu responds every time Sadako says anything. Sadako can't hear her, but Hanyu still responds to her when she's in a good mood. It's like she's answering a question asked on TV. You can even compare it to playing house. She started playing this game with other people because she can't communicate with anyone else but me. Hanyu always attends our club meetings, and she has a good time there too. If she could communicate with my other friends, she would have been a good match for us. But I don't want to hurt her feelings by thinking about that. The story of the miracle written in the old scriptures is true. It's really Hanyu who performed it. She's someone who had tremendous power long ago. But now she doesn't have any spiritual power, and I'm the only one who can even see her. Hanyu has never told me how she lost her power. I just have to assume that her spiritual power diminished over time. There's a legend in the Furude family that says Oyashiro-sama will be reborn if a girl is born into the family 7 generations in a row. With my birth, Hanyu is finally able to communicate with the human for the first time in centuries. Does that mean Oyashiro-sama has returned? The villager's image of Oyashiro-sama doesn't quite match up with that of Hanyu. Especially when I see her lying on her belly and watching TV with Sadako. So there we have confirmation that she is in fact the reincarnation of Oyashiro-sama. I'm sure that's what everyone was expecting, is a tiny little girl is Oyashiro-sama. But that's... oh, wrong one. But that seems like as good a place as any to call it